¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kan du norsk?
If you've heard that sound from Babbel before, I bet you do. Babbel is the science-backed language learning app that actually works. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. With over 16 million subscriptions sold and a 20-day money-back guarantee, just start speaking another language with Babbel. Right now, up to 55% off your Babbel subscription at babbel.com/Spotify podcast. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify podcast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
The Ford Explorer is America's all-time best-selling SUV. But we couldn't leave it at that, because you still have unmarked paths to pursue. So we gave it an available 400-horsepower engine. It's up to you what you do with that power. The 2025 Ford Explorer. It's all in the name.
Based on S&P Global Mobility 1946 to current U.S. total new cumulative registrations for all vehicles identified as SUVs. Horsepower and torque ratings based on premium fuel per SAE J1349 standard. Your results may vary.
The holiday season officially starts when you get that first card in the mail. Shutterfly makes it easy to add more meaning to the everyday with hundreds of holiday card designs that can be personalized in seconds with your favorite photos from this year. Select your greeting, customize the color, and even add little extras like personalized foil to make a holiday card that really shines. Enjoy 40% off with code SMILE40 at Shutterfly.com and send something meaningful this year. See site for more details.
We want to warn you that this podcast contains disturbing content.
Hello. Hi.
Yeah, make sure you leave your mouth open, Jaycee, and,
Go ahead.
show us how you eat.
Morning of June 10th, everything was a little rushed in the Dugard household.
It's early morning on June 10th, 1991, in a house just outside the small town of South Lake Tahoe, California. 11-year-old Jaycee Dugard is getting ready to take the school bus to school. She puts on her favorite pink sweater and pink tights.
June 10th was actually the beginning of the last week of Jaycee's school year, so she was getting very excited about that. But her mother, Terry, was in a big rush to get out because she was late for work. So, in fact, she usually kissed Jaycee goodbye, but that day she didn't have time, so she just rushed out.
I wish I would have kissed her goodbye. That morning I was running late for work and bound and determined to be on time, and I walked out of this house without kissing her.
After her mother leaves, Jaycee glances at the clock on the microwave and sees it's 8:05. Time to head for the school bus. She leaves the white house surrounded by tall pine trees, typical for this part of California. She says goodbye to her stepfather, Carl, who's working in the garage. He watches as she hops down the street towards the bus stop, 3 blocks away, in classic 11-year-old fashion.
She'd walk up the hill, which is a pretty steep hill, I'd say a good quarter mile. And I was down the garage, and this car came down, circled, and kind of real slow. So I thought maybe they wanted to talk to me or maybe directions. The car went past, went up the hill, kind of like just went real slow. It waited for her to get to the top of the hill.
Carl sees a silver gray Ford driving slowly up the street. He wonders why it's driving so slowly. Maybe the driver's lost. He also notices a man and a woman inside the car.
He gets a good look. He sees an olive-skinned lady passenger with black hair, and he watches the car driving up the hill, and it pulls along Jaycee, and then suddenly it just turned to block her path, and the brakes screeched.
And the car was on the right-hand side. It sped across in front of her. I saw it stop. I saw the dust. I saw the door fly open, and then I realized I heard one scream. I tried to grab my mountain bike, which I did, and I got about a third of the way up the hill where that car is at, and I realized I couldn't catch him.
He was terrified. I mean, he heard his daughter scream, and she's being taken into a car.
Yes, Carl sees his stepdaughter, Jaycee Lee, being dragged into the gray Ford. And although he's an ex-military man in pretty good shape, he can't catch up to the car on his mountain bike. He turns back home and yells at a neighbor to call 911. And when he arrives, they've already got the emergency services on the line.
911, this is 911.
on Pioneer Boulevard, the wash zone. My daughter was just kidnapped. Top of the hill was a gray Ford. A man and a woman in the car.
I'm feeling total panic. Total panic.
I need her home. I need her to come home tonight. Jaycee, you hear Mommy? I love you. And I want you to come home tonight, safe and sound.
But Jaycee isn't coming home. Not that night, not the next, or the night after that. You're listening to Girl Missing, a documentary series in 6 parts about an 11-year-old girl who was kidnapped and disappeared. And for almost 20 years, no one had any idea what had happened to her. I'm your host, Jonathan Rollins. If you like this series, don't forget to follow Crime by PodLit so you see when new episodes are released. This is Chapter 1, The First Kidnapping. We're in a place called South Lake Tahoe. It's a small, picturesque town right on the border between California and Nevada, located on the southern shore of Lake Tahoe. The lake is 495 square kilometers in size and is actually the second deepest lake in the United States, 501 meters at its deepest point.
This, as you know, is the greatest spectacle in all winter sport. The world's best skiers and skaters have come to this remote valley with the odd-sounding name, Squaw Valley.
Already in 1960, the 8th Winter Olympics were held in Squaw Valley, which is where South Lake Tahoe is located. It was then a fairly unknown place to the world, but soon people understood why South Lake Tahoe was perfect for skiing and for hosting the Winter Olympics.
It is one of the finest natural amphitheaters in the world for winter sports. It has a valley floor 6,200 feet above sea level that's half a mile wide by a couple of miles long.
Yes, the Winter Olympics put the town and the place on the map.
It's a snow resort and very touristy. There's casinos there.
This is author John Glatt, who has written numerous books about major crime cases in the U.S., including this one. He will be our guide throughout this series, and it's important to get a picture of what South Lake Tahoe is like, as much of what happens in this series takes place here.
They get a lot of tourists, as I say, and in the summer it's kind of a nice place. There's swimming and things like that, and entertainment.
South Lake Tahoe has what's known as a mountain climate, which means cold, snowy winters and dry, warm summers, with daytime temperatures reaching nearly 30 degrees Celsius.
The very first and most popular reason people love living in South Lake is the easy access to the shores of Lake Tahoe.
But despite this, only about 20,000 people live in South Lake Tahoe year-round.
So it's kind of a low crime area usually, and it's a nice place that people live, you know.
In the 1950s, the first casino in Lake Tahoe was opened by businessman Bill Harrah. Harrah's Lake Tahoe still exists today, but over the years, several other casinos have opened. And these places have long been important workplaces for thousands of Lake Tahoe residents. And now, we are going to travel back to the time when this unlikely story begins. And it was quite a long time ago.
This tremendous crowd at 4 o'clock in the morning represents hundreds of millions of American people who are now ready to see our nation unified, and I want to congratulate the toughest and most formidable opponent that anyone could possibly have, President Gerald Ford.
Yes, this is November 1976, and Jimmy Carter has just been elected president.
It's the night of the senior prom. The Bates High School gym is alive with excitement. Everybody is there, even Carrie White, the girl no one likes.
We're all sorry about this incident, Cassie.
The horror movie Carrie, based on Stephen King's bestseller of the same name, has just premiered in theaters.
Obviously, the world and America was completely different in 1976. There were no computers, there was no internet, there was no cell phones. I mean, it was like a totally different world.
No, people weren't IT specialists, app developers, or tech billionaires in California at this time, although companies like IBM and Hewlett-Packard already existed. But people were more likely to work in finance at Stanford University or as pilots.
Quite a quick flight time today, 3 hours and 15 minutes.
The most modern thing you could do was fly Concorde across the Atlantic, which took only 3.5 hours. In April 1976, Air France launched its route between Washington and Paris, and British Airways its route between Washington and London.
As far as music, there was a lot of rock and roll music. Steve Miller Band were particularly big. Thin Lizzy and Rod Stewart both had big hits in 1976. So it was quite an exciting time to be alive.
And for one of the main characters in this story, Katie Callaway, 1976 was an exciting time to live. She worked as a croupier at a casino in South Lake Tahoe.
Well, Katie Callaway was in her early 20s. She was a mother of a young child, and she had a boyfriend she was going steady with, and she was kind of just doing her own thing, and looking for love, I guess.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. So much of your personal info is out of your control, like your insurance provider that has your social security number and your favorite retailer that has your payment details. If they get breached, your information, your identity, is vulnerable. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year at LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
What's up, guys? It's the champ, Sean O'Malley, here to talk to you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money while watching football. Run your game on Prize Picks.
Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code SPOTIFY. That's code SPOTIFY on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. The holidays are here, and you know what that means? It's time to get your friends and family the gifts they deserve. Take the stress out of shopping with Amazon's great deals and low prices on a huge range of items from toys to tech and much more. Whoever you're gifting for, Amazon has great prices on everything you need this holiday season. Shop early holiday deals now.
On this particular evening, November 22nd, 1976, it was cold in South Lake Tahoe. And at this time of the year, it also got dark quite early.
Katie, I think, was getting ready for a date with her boyfriend. She was all prepared, and then just as she was about to leave to go out on the date, he called and asked her to just get a few kind of groceries and some coffee from a local supermarket. So she stopped in there on the way to meet him. I think it was called the A1, something like that.
Yes, on her way to her boyfriend in State Line, Katie Callaway stopped to buy coffee, rice, and oil at Inc.'s A1 Tahoe Market. Her hair was cut in the trendy Farrah Fawcett style of the time. She was wearing a green and blue ski jacket, a striped hoodie, and a pair of blue Levi's jeans.
And when I came out of the grocery store, a man approached me on my driver's side window. He knocked on my window, and he said,
Katie Callaway told her story to AP in 2009.
"Excuse me, I didn't mean to frighten you. My car won't start in this cold. I'm staying with some friends down there. Could you help me out?" And so I thought, oh, well, okay. I'll make him hold the chipino in the crock pot in his lap. What I saw was a very tall, slender normal-looking white male. He didn't look like what I thought a rapist would look like, obviously.
No, the man who knocked on Katie's car window and asked for a ride that cold evening because his car wouldn't start didn't look like a rapist. He was a rather handsome guy in his mid-20s with dark hair and tall. She said if he could hold the warm stew she'd made for her boyfriend, which was already sitting on the passenger seat on his lap, he could get a ride for a few blocks.
And as we drove down the main street of Lake Tahoe, I made small conversation with him. Tried to feel out his demeanor, and feel out if he was a threat. He seemed like kind of a normal person.
But after a while, when the man made no attempt to get out, Katie started to wonder where he was going. She was about to turn off toward State Line where her boyfriend lived. So she asked, and the man replied, "Oh, it's just around the corner here." So Katie turned the corner and stopped the car.
He then slammed my head into the steering wheel. He threw my keys on the floor. He had handcuffs out of his pocket faster than I knew what was going on. He overpowered me, and he handcuffed me behind my back. And said, "I just want a piece of ass. If you be good, you won't get hurt."
Yes, suddenly the man attacked her, and Katie was so shocked that she didn't know what to do at first. But the man beside her knew exactly what he was doing. He was prepared with handcuffs, as we heard, but that wasn't all. Author John Glatt explains.
He actually ties a long belt over her neck and puts her in the passenger seat on the floor and puts a coat over her and then drives off. And she's terrified, of course, terrified.
On the floor, bound, with a coat over her head, Katie asked the stranger where he was taking her. "Somewhere far away," he replied. And so they drove through the dark, cold landscape. But he assured her that if she behaved, he wouldn't hurt her.
"I just need to take you because I wanted to kidnap a girl for sex, for a sexual fantasy. So if you don't put up a fight, everything's going to be fine,
"Why can't we just stop here? You can have sex with me, and then you can let me go," Katie asked. But the man said he had a plan, and he had a place where he was taking her. He repeated again that he wouldn't hurt her or kill her as long as she did exactly what he said.
And then at one point, her car's running out of gas. They stop at a gas station, and he gets out to try and put in gas, but the gas nozzle doesn't fit. So he starts freaking out, and he goes back and starts accusing her of what she done. Why isn't the gas nozzle working?
And that's when Katie realized that this man could get really, really angry if things didn't go his way. He yelled at her, suspecting that she had done something to the gas cap. "Why can't I fill it up? Why isn't it working?"
And she says, "Well, you have to use unleaded." So he goes back and he does fill out the gas, and they drive off.
With the car filled with unleaded gasoline, they continued driving north. Through a small hole in the coat, Katie could see they were leaving South Lake Tahoe and heading into the darkness. She kept talking to the man, trying to learn more about him and to avoid going mad there on the floor of the car. She recounted her experience in the documentary Captive for 18 years.
I started asking him questions like, where are you taking me? What's your name? He answered Phil, and then he kind of changed it again, realizing he'd tripped up and said his name, and he says, "No, my name is Bill."
Then Katie saw that they were passing through Carson City, Nevada, as they stopped at a red light, and she recognized a sign on a casino.
So she has an idea of where they're going, but she's, absolutely trying to keep herself, stable and not go, crazy.
At 9 o'clock, the man stopped the car outside a storage unit on the outskirts of Reno. He went up to one of the units to unlock it, but came back quickly, furious.
He'd forgotten his key, dropped it somewhere, so he'd had to jam it open with, He'd had to take a jemmy from the car and jemmy it open.
Katie said there was a crowbar in her car, and he managed to pry the lock open.
He takes her out of the car, leads her into it.
As you lifted the garage-like door to it, the first 3 feet was stacked with boxes, like it was in storage, that were half opened with china and stuff coming out.
Katie Callaway described the scene inside the storage unit on Larry King Live.
And right behind them was a wall of carpet hanging from the ceiling, and with an opening at one end, a small opening at one end. And carpet is heavy, you know, big rugs are heavy. And about a foot behind that was another wall of carpet with the opening at the other end. And then another one behind that. It was like a maze. And in the back part of the mini warehouse where he had me, he had it set up to keep someone for a while.
The man leads Katie through this maze of carpets until they reach a room, dark and soundproofed.
He proudly tells her this is where he rehearses, you know, with his band, you know, and they practice there. And she's absolutely terrified. She doesn't know what to expect.
I saw a dirty mattress on the floor with a red hoey satin sheet and a filthy fake fur blanket or rug. I saw a projector. He never showed me any films, but I saw a projector, the old 8mm real kind. I saw stacks of pornographic magazines, and there was a very large pair of scissors.
In this small room, with a dirty mattress covered in red satin sheets, piles of porn magazines, and a giant pair of scissors that terrified Katie, the man started talking.
In this ad for the Mobile One brand, I have 30 seconds to talk about driving, which might be what you're doing right now. Maybe you're in the car, you're free, you're in control, on an open road with an open calendar. Your mind is wandering, and you're going with it. Or maybe you're stuck at work, in meetings, or emails, or worse, meetings about emails. And if that's the case, there's only one question. Why? Mobile One, for the love of driving. Visit loveofdriving.us/radio to learn more.
Streaming only on Peacock.
Being with Finch felt like I was in some fairy tale. She's like, I write for Grey's Anatomy. I was like, what?
Her writing was so highly regarded because Finch had been through so much.
A Hollywood writer's life.
When you love somebody, you'll ignore red flags so they're hitting you in the head.
Filled with fiction.
She would do whatever it takes to get ahead.
She's sort of like a TV series.
I don't know who my wife is.
Anatomy of Lies. Streaming October 15th, only on Peacock.
It was all a lie.
He tells her he has a problem with sex, and he's been arrested for that, and he starts smoking joints and whatever, and offering her some joints. He opens a bottle of wine, and she agrees to have like half a glass, and after about half an hour, you know, she starts getting really terrified, and I think he starts getting turned on. So he gets her to undress, and then he takes off his clothes.
And he raped me, repeatedly.
The rape, or rapes, go on for hours in the small, soundproof room. The man doesn't just drink wine and smoke weed. He also takes LSD at least 4 times during the evening. He demands that she satisfy him. He takes her from behind and from the front, all the while drinking more and more wine and taking more and more drugs. Throughout the entire time, there's a radio playing in the background that Katie can hear.
So the only way she's keeping time is because she hears the news bulletin every hour, you know. So she's got some idea of the time and everything.
Shortly after midnight, there's a sudden knock at the door. It's a neighbor who had walked by outside and wondered about the strange car parked there. The knocking happens several times, loudly, but Katie doesn't dare to scream. She thinks about the scissors and about the man's erratic behavior. After a while, the neighbor gives up. I thought no one was there, he explained later. The man leaves Katie on the floor to check and comes back giggling. It was just a neighbor, he says. He wanted to ask about a song on the radio. He probably knew exactly what we're doing, he adds, laughing. Then he grabs the large scissors, orders Katie to lie on the floor, and Katie becomes terrified. She explains to AP.
He appeared to me to be crazy or on drugs and off in some other world, you know. And so I thought, I just have to humanize myself here. I have to stay alive. And so I said, no, I've been good.
But instead of hurting her with the scissors, the man starts cutting off her pubic hair. "It's scratching me," he says, before continuing to sexually assault her. But then something happens.
A couple of hours later, there's another knock on the door on the storage unit. It's around, I think, around 2 o'clock, 2:30 at that point. And one of the, street beat Reno policemen has been passing by, and he sees this California plate car. And it also isn't iced up, like it's so cold there that most of the other cars, all the windows are iced. This one wasn't. So he gets suspicious and he goes and looks at the lock.
Yes, the officer wonders how a car with California plates could be parked there without frost on the windows on such a cold night. He becomes even more suspicious when he sees the lock has been broken. So he knocks, and Katie sees the man put on his clothes and go outside to check. He comes back and says, "It's the police." "Will you be quiet?" he asks, looking at Katie. She nods. So the man goes out and opens the door for the police officer, who asks who he is and what he's doing.
I'm just, having a party with my girlfriend, nothing to worry about. And the policeman's kind of suspicious, and he's saying, like, Reno PD, and poor Katie can hear that.
And I sat there for about 20, 30 seconds, and I thought, if that's a police officer out there, I have to try. So I did. I went crashing through what I could see, the carpets hanging from the walls, all the obstructions in my way. I went crashing through out to where the police officer was, and I said, help me, please.
Completely naked, Katie throws herself through the layers of carpets and meets a shocked and surprised police officer. But the kidnapper, whose name she doesn't yet know, though it will soon be revealed, thinks quickly and continues playing innocent. "It's just a game my girlfriend and I are playing, a role play."
"No, it's just my girlfriend, we're just having a party."
Katie tries to deny it, saying that they're not having fun or playing a game, that he had kidnapped her. The officer asks whose car it is, and Katie says it's hers, that the man had overpowered her in the car. Meanwhile, her kidnapper denies everything, saying she was driving and that everything was consensual. And the officer listens to the man and seems convinced by him. This is something that will happen many times in the future, for this man has a way of getting almost anyone to believe him. He has a charm that few seem able to resist, and it will prove deadly many times over.
Well, he's a master manipulator all the way through.
So the officer asks Katie to go inside and get dressed, which she does, while the man stays behind, explaining his innocence.
No, this is his girlfriend, and in fact, he's married and he doesn't want his wife to find out.
And then the officer does something that's hard to understand. He lets the man go back inside to get his jacket.
The policeman, didn't show much sense to do that,
So as Katie stands there in the soundproof room, still half naked, the man who had raped her over and over for hours comes back inside. She thought she had been saved. In the next episode, it turns out that the man who kidnapped Katie has a background filled with sex and violence.
He would stop outside elementary and high schools in his car and masturbate, with a curtain over the window to very young girls.
And that Katie is not the first, nor the last, person he will kidnap and rape.
There was an instance where he kidnapped, I think it was a 12-year-old girl, from outside of school and took her to a hotel and then had sex with her. And the next morning the parents found him.
But next time it gets much worse.
Was like the most horrible moment of your life times 10.
You have been listening to the first chapter of Missing and Found, a 6-part series. The clips in this episode are from Captive for 18 Years, Stolen Lives, Orange County Register, the YouTube channel History, Jen Alamade Realtor, AP, Amazon MGM Studios, CBS News Archive, and Weird History. This series was narrated by me, Jonathan Rollins, created by Tove Freeman Leffler. Executive producers are Jens Nielsen and Thomas Rajnai, who also did the sound editing and mixing. This is a production by PodLit, and don't forget to follow Crime by PodLit to find our other series and get notified when the next episode of this one is released. Thank you for listening.